Yes, yes, y'all. You are now listening to the Shophar blowing. The Shophar is blowing the coronated queen or king. The Shophar is blown to inspire the people to do their thing. And today, the Shophar is being blown to inspire us to let the pleasure just flow. This is Blog Talk Radio, and you're listening to Faux Show Holistic Health. I'm your host, Shophar, from Faux Show Energy Work. And today, my guest is Habeeb Akande. Habeeb is British-born of Nigerian descent. He graduated from Kingston University. He is the author of 5 books, including Illuminating Blackness, Black and Muslims in Brazil, and A Taste of Honey, Sexuality and Erotica in Islam. And today, we're going to be talking about his book, Kunyaza, The Secret of Female Pleasure. Brother Habeeb Akande, you there?
I'm here, Shophar. How are you, brother?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. No question. Definitely been looking forward to it. So everything is going well with you?
Yeah, everything is fine, thank you. In London, it's really cold out here, but how is it for you?
Oh, it's good. I'm in San Diego. We get a little spoiled. I'm originally from, I know you're over in Great Britain, so I'm from those upstarts. I'm originally from Virginia, one of the original 13 colonies.
Nice. It's freezing. It's actually snowing here. It's freezing.
It's snowing there. Oh, wow. Yeah, see, now I had to go ahead and move to the West Coast. San Diego definitely has spoiled me. So I'm good if I don't see any more snow other than, like, maybe trying to do some snowboarding or something,
I don't blame you.
No question. Well, all right, let's go ahead and jump into this because, it's only 30 minutes. So, Kunyaza, tell the family out there, what is that?
Yeah, so Kunyaza is a traditional sensual technique originally from Rwanda in East Central Africa. And basically, the technique, it triggers female ejaculation and multiple orgasms in women during heterosexual encounters. Basically, that's in a nutshell what it's about. It's a tradition that's been originated over 150 years ago. And it's basically, like I said, it's a sexual technique. It's all about female pleasure. And it's where a man will use his parts of his genitalia in order to stimulate the woman, he's obviously female's companion, in order to facilitate female ejaculation and also orgasm. The word itself, kunyaza, is derived from a Rwandanese word called kunyara, which means to urinate, and it comes from an expression to urinate, meaning not to urinate literally, but to expel fluid, which is to ejaculate. And it's a phenomenon, like I said, that's been in existence for over 150 years.
Gotcha.
But not many people know about it. So I'm trying to bring it to light and talk about not only this tradition, which is female-orientated and female-empowering, it's also about the psychology of the tradition, because it's not just the technique itself, which my book is about and I'm trying to explore. I'm trying to understand the psychology of male-female relations in Rwanda and East Central Africa, because amongst a number of the Rwandese people, it's the man's duty to pleasure a woman. Not only physically, but emotionally and mentally. Now, everyone, when they talk about Kunyaza, they generally think about the actual sexual technique itself. But prior to Kunyaza, it's all about the mental stimulation that the man has to do in order to make his girlfriend or wife feel comfortable before they actually engage in the actual act itself. So I'm more interested in the psychology of the actual technique as opposed to the actual technique itself.
Got you. Wow. That's deep, Habeeb. The emotional component too. We'll have to talk some offline about what I do, because that's a deep part right there. So that was another one of my questions I wanted to ask you. In your research, did you find that this was that it really is genuinely empowering to women, or is it just another way to validate men's sexuality, masculinity?
No, it was actually empowering for women, and that was what I was actually more intrigued by it, because there was a recent documentary which came out last year called Sacred Water. And I would advise anyone who's interested, to go and check that out. And it's basically where a white Belgian man, he heard about the technique and he wanted to understand, not just the technique itself, but is this something which empowers women, or is it for men's ego? And it was actually, he interviewed a number of people, especially one woman who was, she was a Senga, which is basically a female sex educator, and she was teaching men as well as women the importance of this tradition and why they're trying to maintain it, because, like I said, it's not the actual technique itself which is important, but it's what goes on beforehand in terms of the man ensuring that the woman is at ease both psychologically and emotionally before even engaging in any sexual encounter, because that's what the tradition is about. It's about empowering women and making sure they feel at ease. Again, before you're talking about their sexual pleasure, emotional pleasure and psychological pleasure is as important.
I like that, man. I like that. You know, in doing my research for the show, I actually watched one video that showed the technique, but it reminded me a lot of still of American porn. And maybe some good videos out there, but I didn't have much time, so I only found one. And the one I found, I could tell that the woman still wasn't comfortable. And sure enough, like she didn't ejaculate. You know, during, I mean, the tapping technique and all that was there, but I think probably because of the camera and all of that, she just, you know, and that's what I find, you know, you find in American porn a lot of times the women are dry, you know, they're not even wet, you know. So that's interesting. I think that's very deep.
Yeah, so it's kind of, and that's something which I wanted to explore, because what's happened in the last, you could say 5 to 10 years, is a lot of Europeans, once they've heard about this technique, they're kind of trying to exploit it, and they talk about the technique itself as opposed to the tradition. Because when you talk about the Kunyaza tradition, it's more than just the technique itself. Because, you know, the Europeans, they'll just take like the technique and think, if you just do this technique, all of a sudden a woman can achieve climax. And there's more to it than that. And that's what, when I spoke earlier about the psychology of Kunyaza, which is making sure that the man treats his woman like a lady, making sure she feels comfortable. So, but it's not just about, you know, you do this technique, this tapping technique, and all of a sudden she can ejaculate. Because that's something that a lot of, like I said, Europeans, they're concentrating on, as opposed to the foreplay which goes on beforehand, not only physical foreplay, but mental foreplay, which is part of the Kunyaza tradition, which, again, for every reason, a lot of Europeans don't speak about that. They just like the actual technique itself, and then they're equating it to pornography when it's very different.
Amen. Brother Habeeb, I mean, one of the things about this machine culture, microwave culture that, you know, Western culture that we live in is the hurried way of learning things and trying to apply these different, you know, maybe ancient techniques like Kunyaza or Tantra or Taoism or whatever, different things around sexuality, and not really realizing the holistic approach of these indigenous cultures when talking about sex. It wasn't just you do this technique and that's how it works. I love that your book and that you're interested in bringing to the public that is a holistic approach to this. It's not just the physical technique. It's a whole other aspect there that could be missed. Could you go a little bit into about what are some of the things that you found in the Rwandan culture that, you know, traditional Rwandan culture that the men do to relax the woman?
Okay, in terms of what I found, and some of the fascinating things I found was, starting with the women, because I think they're more important in this regard, is how they view their own sexuality and how they view themselves. So, because I'm sure it's the same in America, but it's the same like in Europe in terms of a lot of the mental hang-ups that many women have in terms of the way they view themselves, in terms of physically and like in terms of what is like the correct way that the genitalia should look like. They don't have those hang-ups. So you have women of different types. You've got women that's, you know, very voluptuous, women that's very slender, and they're all proud of the way, not only the way they look physically, but also their genitalia. And there's something which, there's a phenomenon which, again, is quite popular in Europe, and I'm sure it's the case in America, where there's a number of women are trying to get this so-called perfect vagina. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, and it's something that, again, because of pornography as well. And that's why, even in terms of this practice, the reason why some women from Europe and America are finding it difficult to ejaculate was because they weren't comfortable with the way their genitalia looks. Whereas in comparison, when you're looking at a lot of traditional women from East Africa and Central Africa and Rwanda, they were comfortable with the way they look. They were comfortable with imperfection. Whereas in the West, we're trying to get this idyllic, you know, body form which doesn't exist in reality. So a lot of it, what I found was really interesting, was how they perceived themselves and how they perceived sexuality. And they wasn't, again, because pornography wasn't, again, I'm mainly talking about traditional Rwandan people, they wasn't influenced by pornography and they wasn't educated about sex via pornography like many people in the West. Their understandings about male-female relations and sexual interactions was very different to what someone maybe from the West would think, because a lot of the education comes from pornography, whereas with them, was about getting to know the person first and foremost for who they are, even the way the woman looks, appreciating even her imperfections, and all of these things. Even when men spoke about women, whether she was quite large, whether she was slightly overweight, they all found that this is something that was alluring and something that they felt attracted to her, not like they were looking for this ideal form, which again, in this, you mentioned earlier about this like machine culture that we're in, where everyone's looking for a woman that looks like someone on TV, when that's like an unrealistic, ideal that people are chasing. Whereas with a number of the women and the men, they embrace people as they then in their natural state, which I think was very empowering, because when they're engaging in any sexual interactions, there's no hang-ups. There's no mental hang-ups where the woman might be thinking about, you might not like me by the way I look, by the way my genitalia might look, or where they're appreciating the woman. When I spoke to some of the men and some of the women, they didn't have a lot of these hang-ups that many people seem to be having in the West. So it was more of their mindset which impressed me more than anything, because they embrace people, like I said, as individuals, and the men talk each woman as her own individual, rather than saying they want a woman that they're obsessed with on TV or pornography, and that's what they're looking for. A lot of it was their mindset, to be honest, that kind of got me.
Oh, that's dope, man. That's huge, man, because in the work that I do, I find that a lot of times that's one of the big hang-ups if you work with a single person or a couple, is that just to deconstruct some of these false belief systems about what the body is supposed to look like, and these idols, if you will, that have been erected in the mind, and then also how in this culture, like, we put each other, sexually up on an auction block, and it's like we're put up on an auction block, and we have to look a certain way, and any of those different beliefs, in my opinion, Habeeb, it does exactly what you're saying. It cuts off sensuality and sexuality to a place where the energy can't flow in a way that will allow for kunyaza that just naturally happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's
definitely.
That's
and
very
one thing
cool,
as well is that, even though the technique or the tradition helps facilitate female ejaculation and multiple orgasms, that was never the goal.
Gotcha.
Like, the goal is not, like some women find it very easier to ejaculate than others, but that was never the goal. It was, this is a technique that helps, but ultimately it's about female pleasure. Now, whether that comes in the form of ejaculation, whether that comes in the form of orgasms, whether that comes in the form of just gentle touching, that was the most important thing. The goal wasn't, she just needs to climax. They wasn't goal orientated the way many people are in the West. They're more pleasure-orientated, and it's more holistic approach again. So just understanding the way they viewed relations. And a lot of these wisdoms that I learned and speaking to different people was from the older generation. But a lot of the younger generation, both in Rwanda, because I spoke to some people online, and even those that living outside Rwanda, they wasn't aware of these customs, because obviously they've been influenced by the West. So even for some of them, they've abandoned this kind of culture because they think it's Asian, when in reality there's a lot of golden wisdom that you can take from their own kind of heritage. But again, they kind of more look into the West and Hollywood in terms of understanding what should be like acceptable male-female relations, which is quite strange to me.
Right. I love that point that you touched on there too, Habeeb. I mean, because of the proliferation of these different things in the West now, and with a slant on it, like, say, they take Taoist teachings, they take tantric teachings and everything, but it's very just goal-oriented, and very, I would say, sex-oriented, not even pleasure-oriented. There is a difference. And because pleasure is actually a very healing modality. But in the West, these different things have been kind of, stripped down to just be sex-oriented. So I love that here in a traditional African culture, we actually find that it was pleasure-based and not goal-based. That's very cool.
Yeah, and just the last thing, I mean, even for even some viewers, listeners, when you even mention, like, for example, like Kama Sutra, everyone's aware, or most people think they're aware of the Kama Sutra. But if you ask the average person, what is the Kama Sutra, they'll think of like sex positions, when in reality it was a spiritual religious guidebook teaching both the man and the woman about male-female interactions. And only 25% of the actual book deals with sex positions. But the West, when it was found in the 19th century and translated, they just concentrated on sex positions. And for now, when people think of Kama Sutra, they just think of all these, elaborate sex positions, when that's only, that's less than half of the book, it's only 25% of the book. And it's doing a disservice to even that ancient tradition. So when people think of the Kama Sutra, they think it's just about sex, when it's more about pleasure and spirituality, which again, that's something which I didn't want people to, when they hear Kunyaza, just think it's just about sex, when it's more about sensuality and like female pleasure, which again is more of a holistic approach.
I love what you say there. I mean, this is again to put us on notice. Those of us who have the Western mind, we've been impregnated with it and have cultivated it, knowingly or unknowingly. And looking at what has happened with Kama Sutra, like you're talking about, same thing like with yoga. It's like we get, we're taught to just get in these different positions. Maybe it's a good thing to get fit or to, to stretch, and that's all beautiful. That serves a purpose. But there was actually a deep inner teaching that goes along with that. And the same thing like you're talking about with the Kama Sutra is like, yes, there were different positions and stuff, but there was also something deep going on spiritually and inwardly with each individual themselves, and then also in connecting with another human being. So I'm glad that you're bringing that to the forefront with this practice, with Kunyaza.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about education. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to humble ourselves to those that came before us, because they might have not had the technology that we've got today, but they had a lot of wisdom, and I'll argue that more wisdom that we've got now. And that's why I think it's just about trying to humble ourselves and learn from those who came before us to benefit those who, not only our generation, but those who are coming after us.
And for those that came before us, I one of the things in researching this, Habeeb, that I truly liked about it too, is that there was at least, I don't know, I think from what I picked up in the research that I saw, some of the videos and stuff, that, just like a lot of cultures, it's starting to get westernized, but there was definitely and has been a big, that the elders play a big role of teaching actually, a woman or a man about sex. Can you talk a little bit about that in your research? About the role of the elders?
Definitely. So, yes, and I'm glad you said that. And not only the elders, but the women as well. And again, especially to see so many, the Kunyaza tradition is maintained and is taught generally by women who are known as Sengas, which is a female sex educator. And generally that woman is a maternal, she's the maternal aunt of the man who's getting married, to, like traditionally to a woman, and the Senga would teach the new bride about this technique. And now Sengas have even become commercialized, where they're teaching both men and women, even people that they're not related to. But it's a tradition which is maintained by women, which is again it's a wonderful thing, and women that are generally like well experienced, not only in terms of physical relations, but also life experience. And I think that's very important, because generally the wisdom and that you get from someone that's in a 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s is very different to speaking to someone maybe that's in their early 20s, because obviously they lack life experience. So that's something that really impressed me, that this is a tradition which is not only from Africa, but it's also maintained by women, and where they're teaching men and women. So that's why, again, this whole idea of it's a technique which is for the man, it's one that is dedicated to women, and it's preserved and taught by women.
I love that. I mean, that it's preserved and maintained and taught, and by women. I mean, that to me, I read a book called Tantric Quest as I was learning, on my path of learning Tantra and Taoism. And one of the things that stood out to me, Habeeb, about that is that the author, Daniel O'Dear, of that book, he said that the true Tantra lines that he dealt with from India, that it was all maintained and preserved by women, and that women were the masters, actually, that they were actually naturally tantric, that they were actually naturally sensual and in contact with that, and that men had to humble themselves and actually go and learn that from the women. And I thought that was a deep concept. Like, wow, so it seems like there's actually a parallel here with the Zingas in what they're doing, how they're maintaining the Kunyaza.
Yeah, most definitely. What was that name of the book again? I want to check that out. That sounded really interesting. Tantric Quest, was it?
Tantric Quest. Yep, Tantric Quest by Daniel O'Dear, Odier. Any of you family out there listening, if you're enjoying this conversation, go check that book out too. It's it's a very, very enlightening book. That like I say, in that culture, in that particular branch of Tantra, the women were of high esteem.
Wow. Amazing.
I have this quote that I had got. Let me see here. It was from one of the guys on one of the elders on Sacred Waters. I saw just the promo video, but as a gentleman by the name of Felix who is 68, he says, "Sex is for the woman. This is because the man has to please her and put her body into a certain state. Her pleasure is that of the most important thing." Wow. I know a lot of women out there, especially in Western culture, they would love to hear what this elder Felix, 68 years old, what he was, the understanding that he came to.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, you're hearing this from a man that is, 68, like you mentioned, but he's come from a culture and a tradition where that's expected, that's the norm. Unlike, Western society where male pleasure is the most important thing. So when you look at pornography and all these things, it's all about male pleasure. But in Rwanda in particular, it's a total opposite. And another thing, when people talk about African sexuality, they might think about female genital mutilation, FGM. That doesn't exist in Rwanda. Right. It's all about pleasuring the women. Yeah, it doesn't exist. So even for them, so a number of the Rwandese people I spoke to, when I mentioned about FGM, they wasn't aware of that because they said that's not our culture. And one thing I think is important for us in the West to understand and realize is that Africans are not a monolithic group. There are various cultures, different cultures and groups within Africa, and even there's certain sexual practices that, like my family is originally from Nigeria, I wasn't aware of this. Right. And I've come from, my culture is more of, it's all about the man and putting the man's pleasure is paramount, whereas I'm hearing, again, a wonderful culture in East Africa where female pleasure is paramount and female sensuality is paramount. And as a man, it's teaching that you, not only, again, physical pleasure, but emotional and mental pleasure is important, that you're supposed to do what you can. You're not a real man until you pleasure the woman. That was a saying that one person I spoke to said. And again, for a man, I think it will teach you sense that, okay, in order to obviously be a man and fulfill your duties as a man, you need to, like you mentioned before, humble yourself and understand the woman that you're with. And if you've got that mindset, it's very different. You have a different reverence and respect that you've got for your female partners, as opposed to the way a lot of men are now, where it's very macho and sexist and it's all about conquering women as opposed to pleasuring women. So there's a lot to learn, because I'll be honest, I came from that mindset which is all about my pleasure was always ahead of any female that I'm with, and it's all about conquering her. That I'm learning a tradition which is telling me that, no, as a man, you're not a real man until you understand your woman, not only physically but emotionally and mentally, and also being able to satisfy. That's a true, that's when you're really kind of like a man. I think it's good for men to hear that message.
Hell yeah. Be humble. Sit down,
Be humble.
Like Kenya said, man. Be humble, sit down, man. I know, Habeeb, when I first saw the tantric masters doing what they do, two of the three tantric masters that I learned from were men, and then the last tantric master is a woman, and she actually gave me an experience of the tantric energy without even touching me. But when I saw this second master doing what he was doing, I was like, man, I thought I had some pretty good sexual experiences, but I was like, I never had what he was doing with this woman. I was like, and he wasn't even touching her. I was like, so I had to humble myself, and I think that's something that you touched on, that a lot of men, that we got to work on. We don't want to learn from women. Like if a woman tells us during sex, it hurts our, we get butt hurt over it. Or, God forbid, another man try to tell us something. So, and I think we miss out. To each their own. But I'll just put it this way: I'm glad I listened.
Right,
well, cool. Hey, I want to ask you this. This is an interesting topic. We probably definitely have to get you back on sometime because we're down to like 5 minutes now. Real quick, and wrapping up, so all of this sounds beautiful, Habeeb. All of this is beautiful, but what is the social impact that you've seen in your research? Has this really trickled over into everyday life for people? Is it being lost? What is some of the social impact that you've seen?
The social impact that I've seen is touching upon what you just mentioned just like a minute ago. Men's understanding of, like, it was a bruise to a lot of men's ego. Like, a lot of the research I conducted with a number of men before finding out about Kunyaza and then finding out about it and then practicing it with their female partners, they saw a different appreciation in terms of their woman, because a lot of couples do not speak about their pleasures and wants. Do you understand? So, but a lot of times it needs the man to humble himself and try and understand what pleasures his lady. And then once he's done that and he sees a different level of gratification and appreciation in their relationships, all of a sudden it makes him feel more better, not only again because he can please his woman, but understand her. So, but I think the most important thing, and men has to humble themselves first and foremost, and like you said, listen. And then when you're willing to listen and be a vessel of education, then ultimately you see a positive impact in your life. But I think the most important thing is for men to kind of, like you mentioned earlier, humble themselves and listen to those who know better, whether it is coming from a woman or from a man, whether it's coming from someone that's younger than you or older than you. But it might take a little bruise to the ego, but again, it's just to humble yourself, and then hopefully you see some, beneficial rewards in not only your physical relations, but even just your overall emotional well-being, because you're giving satisfaction to someone else, which again, there's no better feeling.
I love your message. Hoping big things for your book and for your message. Your insights and stuff, I feel like is very needed. I mean, we see all the things that were going on in Hollywood and the stuff that has been going on with the patriarchal system and everything. People are getting tired of it. So I feel like your message is very timely. So if properly marketed and getting out there, I feel like you got a lot of people who want to hear what you got to say, bro. You're in the right place at the right time. I hope you can get your message out there. With that being said, since we just only have a few moments left, how can people get more information about your book? When is it going to be out? Do you have workshops? Just give people some information about yourself.
Yeah, so people can contact me on social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My social media handle on all platforms is my name, Habeeb Akande, spelled Habeeb, surname spelled Akande. Hopefully the book is going to be released this year on the 8th of August, which is in the same date as International Female Orgasm Day, so that's why we're going to try and drop it on 8th of August. Also I've got a website called rabah.com, RABAAH, which you can find some other works, and hopefully I would like to be working with different people in different specialities like yourself, and we can work up, maybe do some seminars or workshops and things like that, just to kind of educate people and just again learn and benefit from each other with our own different specialities and research that we found.
Hey, definitely love what you're doing, man. Appreciate you, bro. And to all the family out there, thank you for listening. Again, you've been listening to Faux Show Holistic Health on Blog Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Shophar, from Faux Show Energy Work. And y'all stay up, let that pleasure flow. And we'll be talking to you soon. Again, thank you again, Habeeb.
Thank you very much, Faux Show. Take care, brother. Much blessings.
No doubt, man. Peace.